You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Cricket Podcast, where we're going to be talking Australia's exploits against Pakistan. Max, I can't even remember, thinking back to before Christmas, whether we covered the first test. But if you didn't know, just to cover all bases in case, Australia won that, which meant they were 1-0 up in a 3-test series going into the Boxing Day match at the MCG. Can you tell us what happened?
I can indeed. And if we did cover it, I don't think we covered it in a lot of detail. But I mean, that's fine because it was pretty one-sided, wasn't it? Second test in at the MCG in Melbourne, Pakistan won the toss and they elected to bowl, which was quite an interesting decision. Something that a lot of people were surprised about. But then Cummins said they would have bowled as well. There was a bit of green around. It looked like a bit of a lively pitch, and there was life in it. Unfortunately, once life was extracted, the slips didn't do their jobs. David Warner shelled possibly drop of the year. I don't know. It's up there. It was really bad. And that allowed Australia to get off to a pretty commanding start at 100 up with just the loss of 1 wicket. They fought back well, though, Pakistan, and restricted Australia to 318, which kept them in the game with the bat. They got off to a good start again, but Australia did come fighting back in ripping out the middle order without much resistance, and they took a reasonably healthy lead, 54 runs into the second innings. And Pakistan ripped straight into Australia. 16 for 4. Things were looking Dil Pakistan. And then the curse of the drops returned. Mitch Marsh shelled. He went on to score 96. Alex Carey with a very useful 53 to put a pretty difficult looking chase of 317 up on the board. And despite a good effort, a couple of 50s, some contributions in the middle order, Pakistan just fell short at the end at the hand of who else but Patrick Cummins to really put the cherry on top of a year in which he's solved global warming, won the World Cup, made Australia great again, and now topped it off with a 10 for 2 fifers. What a guy! And it says it on the banner on YouTube. Australia are inevitable, and it's they did it in the World Cup, and they've done it here. It's just all so Australia, isn't it?
It was quite Australia. I mean, first things first, I'm going to give a little bit of praise to Pakistan. This match was a better match than it looked like this series was capable of producing.
Yeah.
Pakistan actually did turn up, and again, and it feels like this a lot with Australia this year. The Pakistan lost the big moments. For large portions of this test match, Pakistan played cricket that was at least competitive and sometimes better than what Australia were able to manage. But they let them off the hook. You can't drop the ball when you're fielding. That's a problem. And I think with the bat as well in the first innings, they were 120 for 1. With 300 on the board. I know it's a long way away still. We're talking 200 runs here, but I think from that position you have to at least reach parity, and the run differential that is left over from the first innings goes a long way to explaining why they lost this match, and that, to go back to the Australia thing, has been the story for Australia a lot this year. They have hung in games, notably I think in the Ashes. And then when they've had an opportunity, have been able to go in for the kill. About the World Cup, they hung in the World Cup, and then when they had the opportunity to win it, they did.
They have that sort of relentless nature, haven't they? When an opposition has made a mistake, they punish it. They don't necessarily dominated, but when they've seen that chink of light, they've grabbed it.
And I think that speaks to their sort of all-round quality and the all-round quality they've shown most of the year, to be honest. If you give this team a chance, and if you give sort of any one of 7 or 8 of them a chance, they're individually able to punish you. I mean, if you look at if we run through the Australian team, we've seen Travis Head on a couple of occasions this year almost single-handedly win matches. Mitchell Marsh has had some blinding innings. Mitch Stark has been fantastic in spells. Was fantastic in the Ashes. Pat Cummins, I don't think we really, ridiculous what he's been able to accomplish. And we're not even getting into Smith and Labuschagne and Davey Warner in this, who have also hit quite high notes during the year. They're a really, really, really good team, and this is the sort of match that really, really, really good teams win. It's a cliche in sports, isn't it? Like, when you're a champion side when you can play badly or averagely and still come away with the 3 points or the win. When it comes to this, no doubt helped, I think, by playing in home conditions, as we were sort of saying with the India test earlier on. Like, that is a benefit to Australia. Pakistan really struggled historically to take 20 wickets in Australia. They managed to do it in this match, but it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough. Australia
and
just a bit too good.
Do it with a few guys missing as well. Hassan Ali back in the side, Ahmed Jamal coming in. There's some big notable absences. Naseem Shah, Haris Ralph, both injured. Obviously, Naseem missing during the World Cup as well. So been out for a while. But Pakistan, they've shown they've got a bit of depth with their pace bowling as well. So there's hope there. It's a shame they put out such dry pitches when they're playing at home, isn't it? And they don't sort of maybe encourage a bit more of their fast bowling contingent, because there's a reputation that they've got to uphold. And coming to Australia, they've shown they've got the tools to cause damage. Yeah,
well, I mean, that is bizarre. To be honest, that Pakistan play on the pitches they do at home, but I don't know. Like that, you just have to. You'd have to ask the Pakistani brains trust why that's the case. So I know. I mean, like, to wrap up this test, I don't think there's that much more to say on it, unless you've got any big notes. Australia quite good. Pakistan seem to be heading in the right direction, at least based on the 2 matches of this series. I mean, maybe the next one they'll be even more competitive.
Maybe.
But I think you just see that they're quality-wise, they're just not quite as good as Australia, and that's a barrier to winning.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, they've been a bit, a bit reliant, I suppose, on Babar Azam in recent times, and he's not at the top of his game right now. So that's an issue for them. If someone like him was able to stand up in this game, that makes it a lot closer. So I guess that on the one hand, it's quite reassuring for them that other people have stood up. Sham Masood as captain got 250s, for example, but it's also a concern that their marquee player is not really doing the business. Obviously, you got a 40 in the second innings, but that's not enough to win the match from your talisman. The man that you're putting up as rivaling Virat Kohli and
he's not,
and Kane Williamson as one of the great number 4s. Obviously not. And
it's not even close.
The other moral from this game is just don't drop Mitch Marsh. England did it and learned to their peril it was a bad idea, and Pakistan suffered a similar fate. Don't drop Mitch Marsh. Never do it.
Well, yeah, and maybe by concentrating on the bigger picture here, we didn't touch upon that innings in the detail we should have. That is a brilliant innings after the drop.
Yeah.
Like, that's a match-winning innings.
Yeah.
And it is obscured slightly by Pat Cummins' 10-fer. I think it was Max. I think this is a trivia question for you. The second ever 10-fer by an Australian captain. Who got the first?
Wasn't it? Was it Alan Border?
It was Alan Border. That was good. Yeah, so obviously someone else has been on Twitter or our Discord in the last few days.
Yes.
But like that ends up
that one.
that ends up being probably the bigger story, maybe rightfully so. But Mitch Marsh, great there, and there's only so many times you can say it, and only so many different ways that you can say Pat Cummins is amazing. But like, it was It's a little bit of a surprise. It's only ever happened twice, isn't it? For the
Well, it just shows you how
yeah,
rare it is to have a captain bowling.
yeah.
Captain bowler. Yeah.
Um,
Maybe Pat Cummins, on top of everything else he's achieved this year, can now be the leading light for a change in the way that Test cricket works as countries move towards making their bowler captain. We're going to see Chris Woakes captain England to a new world of England glory.
Well, you have to. I mean, it's a good point actually, Matt, because when he was appointed captain, people were very dubious about the idea that a bowler could captain a team because he wouldn't know when to take himself off, and because you need to rest and
too much
rotate
to
your bowlers.
concentrate on. Yeah,
You probably haven't seen, or there probably haven't been many more successful years that a captain has had in world cricket. In terms of what they were trying to set out to achieve and what they did achieve. I know probably the one thing that was missing was being a captain for the win in India. I think that was Steve Smith took over for that match because he went home to Australia.
Or winning the Ashes in England.
Well, yeah, maybe winning the Ashes, but like I think the balance of that story or of that series, retaining the Ashes was actually quite a good result for Australia. Winning the World Test Championship, excellent. Winning the World Cup when they sort of had to come up with a way of playing mid-tournament after losing a couple of matches, and then sort of signing off with this temper. I mean, like he's absolutely balled out. I think to use the parlance of the times as captain over the last 12 months, and actually since he took the job, it's quite hard to find any ways to seriously criticize him, I think, and doing pretty well. I mean, and then you throw in the £2 million IPL contract?
Yeah, the IPL contract.
It doesn't get much better if you're Pat Cummins, to be honest, does it? Like you retain the Ashes away, World Test Championship, World Cup, second tenfer as captain of the Australia, or as a second tenfer by an Australian captain. You make $2 million. Well, I don't know how many Aussie dollars, 4 million Aussie dollars from the IPL auction. It's an absolute ringing endorsement of yourself. All of those things, isn't it? Like there's anybody who wants to make an argument about Justin Langer and how he was deposed or whatever, you're just evidentially wrong at this point, aren't you? What he has done is like the best job that you could realistically expect to have happened, and unless your sights are set on like a series win in India, something that's completely bonkers. What Cummins has managed to pull off, it's beyond, I think, reasonable expectations. Over that time, so fair play to him, and like we know what a good bowler he is. Probably, and Australia have got some good bowlers, but he's probably in the top three, I would say. Glenn McGrath, Shane Warne, and the Cum Dog at this point. Dennis Lilly knocking about, but not bad. I think you'd say. Not a bad player.
Not a bad player.
Not a bad captain.
Well, a fitting description to offer Pat Cummins to finish the year.
Yeah. Max, we said we'd do a little bit of women's cricket. We've probably got about 5 minutes left in the show. And again, I'm thinking back to this. We didn't, but basically there have been 2 women's test matches. I think this is the story. So I'm going to try and summarize it as quickly as possible. Both happened in India in quite quick succession. England played them after they'd had a quite successful white ball series against the India women's side. Probably went into that with expectations that they might be able to pull off a win. It turned out that England women in India look a lot like England men in India when it comes to Test cricket. Maybe worse. I don't know if they were worse, to be honest.
No, I suppose that's true.
I think it's fair to say that
it was just so long ago. I just forgot how bad England's men were.
It's fair to say that India's women fairly outclassed the England team across that match. And I mean, interestingly, in that particular game, it was the Indian seamers that did a lot of the damage. And it wasn't even the spinners. And then the Australian women had a go, and we all thought this one would be a bit closer, and it probably was. To be fair, and the Australians got over 200 twice. Unfortunately, India got over 400 in one of their innings and made fairly light work of the Australian team in the end, which was, I don't know if I'd describe as an upset, Max, but the manner of the victory maybe was.
Yeah, I think the issue is obviously there's no precedent basically for us to go on. So we didn't really we're going as there's not knowing what is the dominance of this India team at home. Obviously, playing away in India is famously not that easy for particularly England sides and well, both both have had a men's side go there and fail quite spectacularly to win a series in recent times. So we didn't really, but on the women's side, we didn't really know how that would compare. Obviously, England and Australia are ahead of India in the women's game in general. England probably less so. The gap is definitely much tighter than it was, and India would probably make arguments of saying that they're on par with them. Maybe Australia, obviously, the best side in the world by some margin, and that's sort of possibly where you'd think they would have had a good a puncher's chance, should we say, of winning the game. And to be fair, like you said, they did really. Obviously, the 400 was quite a big target to overcome, but they made a pretty good go at it to start with. They were 200 odd for 4, and the back end basically collapsed a bit, and that's where the game changed. But they were in that game for a fairly decent part of it, despite shipping off 400 runs. On the other hand, England very much not in the game at any point. I think they possibly had Sophie Eccleston batting a place too high, which didn't help, and obviously they didn't know what the batting was questionable at best, wasn't it? It was not good.
Yeah, it was confused.
That brunt. They got into their own heads. It was like watching that the Australia series this year where they decided they were going to sweep every ball. It was sort of it was that, but they didn't even get as far as coming up with how they were going to play anything. It was just sort of frozen in indecision, and that's the kind of thing that can happen when you go and do something that you've never really done before. So all I can say is hopefully we get more games like this in the near future, and we can get more of a body of evidence to help teams develop, because obviously Test cricket overseas is difficult, and the only way to get better at it is playing more of it. But it's great for India to welcome sides like England and Australia and comfortably beat them. Great for women's cricket in India, obviously with the women's IPL recently, just this year having its first proper year out. So it's a good time for Indian women's cricket. So there's, for all there could be some doom and gloom around the England side and how badly they got beaten, but in general terms for women's cricket, it's been two important games, one possibly good game and one not so good game, but it's a good start in the right direction. And England have got a wider problem against spin. I know the first innings possibly wasn't about spin, but the second one definitely was. And after their chasing experience against Sri Lanka in the T20 series in England, I think they've got something to work on there.
Right. Max, I think that wraps up the cricket podcast for this week. We should be back in action in the new year. We've still got to do the Christmas quiz, but we need to find Ross for that to happen.
Well, it'll be the big factor of the year instead.
Well, normally we do the Christmas quiz before the last matches of 2023 have happened, or the year. Because obviously the 2022 version wouldn't have done anything to do with 2023. But that's a divergence. But this time we will be able to include things that happened in the Boxing Day cricket matches. So look forward to that. That'll be out sometime soon, and we will wrap up as well what happens in the India series, in South Africa, and the Australia series at home to Pakistan. So goodbye everyone, and catch us soon. Goodbye.